I'm Mark Unger, producer of Roundtable. Because we find this presentation so special, we really would like for you to see this. Please watch.
Good evening and welcome to Single Shot Show at Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Tonight we have our anonymous expert back in the studio to discuss something even more touchy than the discussion of finances for the artist. We will be talking about how artists can evaluate one's work from a marketing perspective. A lot of people probably would have quit art if they would realize what is actual potential of their work, and a lot of people probably would focus more on it if they would understand the potential marketing value of it. So this is a very important subject which for a lot of people is extremely crucial. So we have our anonymous expert joining us tonight again. Thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
And let's see if we would be able to figure out, at least to some degree, how the artist can understand, is it even possible for them to do anything with their art?
They can be better at it if they approach it from the view of not listening to their own opinion, if they want to rely upon sales because they really don't know and the dealer doesn't know. Now that doesn't mean that they can't only focus on what they like, but they have to be prepared for the consequences. So when you first start out and say, what do I want to show, what do I want to sell, what means the most to me, is not the same as the buying market, why they going to buy and why at what price to at least recover your expenses. So you want to take what you're passionate about, what you think you're good about, and then find some way to validate it. And the way to validate it is several. One, you want to ask the opinion of people that have experience, that have seen a lot of other similar work, if it's photography, if it's digital, that have gone to shows and see what's out there, that are professionals in some way. If you can get their attention. These people are very difficult at times. So you can go and you can join clubs and associations, networks, organizations, and try to find people that will take the time to evaluate your portfolio. It takes time, and people, don't understand the times when they're asking someone to look at what they're doing, that, the people that are professional at it, their time is limited and they can't always take the time, or they'd be doing nothing but, which is why galleries are closed to artists. They won't even look at them. They can't. So you want to try to get the opinion of people that you respect, whether it's, an educator, whether it's a more experienced person that has similar experience in what you want to show. If you're doing photojournalism, then you want to talk to artists, photographers that are into photojournalism. If you're going to do abstract photography, then you want to speak to people that have an experience in that way. Luckily, in New York City, you can go and you could even take courses in ICP and other places. That many photographers are always looking for continuing education, and try to find people there or other groups that you could at least know they're not talking to you because they love you, they're your friends, they're your family. They may not know the background, and they'll just say things because they want to make you feel good, and not rely upon your own instinct that in your heart this will sell because you love it. Galleries go out of business for that. Dealers make that mistake. So get opinions, go to shows, see what's selling, compare what you're doing if you can to what the market is, and there are ways of doing that. And it's a very, very difficult thing when you're a photographer and you're prolific. And I've seen mistakes I think photographers make on their websites. They show too much work, they confuse the market. You want to ideally, if you're going to market yourself, do two things. The market, I think it's said, for artists and photographers and fine art, will appreciate originality. They don't want to look at something that's derivative, that's a copy of someone else's, that's similar but changed a little way. They're looking for something that is memorable. If you see an Ansel Adams from 30 feet, who that artist was. That's very difficult to do. You do it in a way with your art, Alex, that you're combining your beautiful night shots, of the city with the colors in a certain way and distorting it, that people look at your art. It's not like anyone else. It's not easy to do. So that's one way. The other is it well done? Do you execute it well? Do you take the time to produce something that's high quality? And that's a minimum start if you want to give yourself the best chance.
It's very subjective to
Always.
Even start talking about it. But actually, it's very interesting that you believe that originality is a way to succeed, because in my experience and from what I observed and what I experienced myself, especially introducing something new, if not revolutionary, it probably wouldn't be modest enough for me to say revolutionary about work I do, but in general,
It's very subjective to
Always.
even start talking about it. But actually, it's very interesting that you believe that originality is a way to succeed. Because in my experience and from what I observed and what I experienced myself, especially introducing something new, if not revolutionary, it probably wouldn't be modest enough for me to say revolutionary about work I do. But in general, what I observed that there is a huge resistance to something people didn't see before in photography. There are certain subjects, there are certain styles and approaches that seem to be performing very well marketing-wise. Nudes, for one, is a theme that almost always generates certain amount of interest and consecutively sales, at least from what I've seen. Cats, it's one of the subjects that sells almost unavoidably.
Okay.
And there's certain approaches, for example, black and white photography, still a way to go if you want to increase your chances to sell your artwork. If you're going in color, you're actually putting yourself in a risky direction. And even though color was introduced to photography around the World War II, apparently it's still something new in art photography. A lot of people considering it to be a little bit of the mainstream for what we consider art photography up to this day.
Well, you touch upon many things, in your experience, and I respect that, and it's real. You've lived it, you've done it, you've committed yourself for years, and most people watching today, they take it seriously, and they're invested in what they're doing, or they wouldn't be
Indeed.
listening in. So let's take it
Naturally.
apart a little bit. The idea of uniqueness and doing something new, and I know you've tried that in your art, and you've wanted to see the reactions of people. First of all, there are two things I think at play, in my opinion. One, the majority of people that go to buy art really are not art experts.
Naturally.
And the whole method of selling to them has to do in part with instilling confidence in them to appreciate what they see and they like and why, so they will pay money for it. That's number one. Secondly, because when it's new, people don't know how to react to it, and doesn't mean that it won't grow in time to be either more accepted or people will pay for it, but really it's limited to the experience and exposure you have for enough people who can appreciate not the fact that it's new, but also that it's quality, they enjoy it and why, and not be afraid because it's a different form. A collector today who is serious about art, you can look and see what's happening in the art world. The concept of art is expanding to everything, applied to everything, every surface, every form, and now you have VR and AR and AI. It's growing leaps and bounds. So originality is hard to achieve, but the connection to the market, appreciating and paying for it, that's trial and error, and getting enough people to see it who can appreciate it, who can afford to buy what it is. And my comments are not related to very inexpensive images. I was talking, and my framework is something that's at least several $100s and up. So when you talk about cats, people love cats, and a cat poster, a cat image will sell. Find me an artist that is producing fine art photography with cats that is getting serious money for it, that is selling limited editions, unless they're famous, and then that follows them. You have to differentiate. How many people who are collectors are going to pay for a cat photo, no matter how well done, because cats have been around longer than cameras. Same thing with nudes. Nudes, you've got to differentiate. So a nude is one of the most popular subject, historical, goes back, and the caveman did it. And today the modern artists are imitating the cave styles, but vice versa, they see the connection. But the idea of a nude, is it well done? And how is it different than everything else? And where does it cross the line to being erotic to sell the art or being self-serving? And I think there's a tendency today, you've seen it coming for decades, of women using art for social statement purposes, for a way to express themselves, to overcome the patriarchy that we have that has kept women in place. And they're empowering themselves, and they started years ago, and now some of them being recognized, where they put themselves out there and they use their body as an object, not just in photography, but actually in performance art, and endure pain, and and they're not restricted, for many of them, to put their soul and blood and body out there But there's a point where it becomes exhibitionist. There's a point where it becomes manipulated for the purpose of selling. And it's like, look at me because I can get your attention. Is it really good art? That has to define everything. What makes it good art? Because it's a nude. That doesn't make it good art.
By itself, of course
if it did, you go out and you buy pornography. Lots of nudes and pornography doesn't make it good art. And,
For sure.
And I've seen it. I've seen artists cross that line. They take great news and they even cross that line. That issue of what's exhibited, where do you go? But there's a huge market for good erotic art, so I'm not saying there isn't, but it's categorized that way and it's done on purpose and it's well done and executed and hopefully original. Hopefully there's something about what it's done, the lighting. I saw one today, it's very original, online. It was a nude woman looking down from the head and where her legs met, she had a mirror. And in the mirror you can see her face. I've never seen that set up before and it was new to me, whether I like it or not. So
That's very interesting, and we will have to get back to this after the break.
And we will have to get back to this after the break. Welcome to Single Trick at Single Shot Show. Today I want to show you how to photograph artwork professionally. We wouldn't be talking about lighting, just about positioning your work in front of the camera. Most of the works are rectangle. So if you position it in a way that it's completely parallel to the lens, you get in the best results. And in order to measure it, you can use something just simple as charging cable. You just measuring the distance from one corner of the artwork to the lens and repeating it for each of the corners, and this way you're getting both of them to be in complete parallel. And I also recommend for doing a quickie like this to use automatic lens with autofocus, so you wouldn't have to worry about focusing your work, especially if it is parallel. Everything will be in focus. You would be able to see the texture and everything pretty clearly. Watch us on YouTube for more single tricks. Back from a break, and actually I think it's time for us to specify why it is so important for the artist to actually evaluate their work. What is the reason why they actually need to know? I know that you often talk about people actually ruining their life with becoming artists, so why wouldn't we look into this direction? Talk about how artists actually taking the wrong route of actually being an artist if they're not meant to be.
Well, you and I, you've heard me speak about this many times in private, and it's the first time I'm able to really share this with an audience. And if you can listen to what I say, and you can say it's not you, it's someone else, the odds are it's some of you listening now, and it's not something that people want to hear. It's why they became an artist in the first place, and it goes down to what's behind the art system, which is based on love and greed. And it doesn't mean that someone should be where they are today and they're frustrated in their lives and they're not accomplishing what they want to do, or they're told they could do, or they pay great money that they could do, and they're wasting their lives because they're not good artists and they never will be good artists, and they want to be good artists and they're told and they're lied to by the system that they can't be good. So my theory is, it goes back to a child, and I had it with my own relatives, where they take young kids and they show what they did and say, look, isn't this good? And my answer is, don't encourage them. Don't tell them it's good. Let him try many different things to find what he wants to enjoy, what he likes, what he has passionate, and what he's good at. So what happens is, the first time a child picks up a crayon and draws, or pencil, and shows it to mommy and daddy, what's the normal reaction? Mommy and daddy want to give that child confidence in everything the child does. That's human nature. So no matter what the child does, it's good, it's wonderful, you're great. What happens to the child? He listens, he's making mommy and daddy happy. Oh, isn't this nice? They like what I'm doing. And when a child is old enough, it's instilling confidence in them, so they keep doing it and they think they're good at it. Well, you can't tell me that a child knows, or the parents know, or an art teacher knows, or a critic knows that a 5-year-old or 7-year-old, or the most common phrase is, I picked up a pencil when I was 3 years old. Like artists think that validates them as a good artist today, somehow the age of 3 comes out.
Indeed, a lot of people
So
do.
then what happens is, I can tell you some of the things they say, it's unbelievable. They don't see it themselves, and I don't laugh anymore. I cry almost.
Would you care to share?
Oh, sure. But get me back to the subjects. I didn't finish it. How love and greed together put people in the wrong place to aspire for things they shouldn't be doing because it's not realistic. So things that people say, they say, I was influenced by, and they list masters. What does influenced by have to do with your ability to take a paintbrush?
Would you care to share?
Oh, sure. But get me back to the subjects. I didn't finish it. How love and greed together put people in the wrong place to aspire for things they shouldn't be doing because it's not realistic. So things that people say, they say, I was influenced by, and they list masters. What does influenced by have to do with your ability to take a paintbrush or camera and produce something of high quality? Influenced by. Or I went to the museum and I spent years traveling and studying and looking. What does that have to do to your skill level? Or the other one, and this is very common in Eastern European countries and Latin America, where the educational system affords great respect to the teachers. And I'll see a resume online, and from one of these Eastern European countries, they talk about the degree they got, could be from a wonderful school, and they'll mention the professor they studied with, as though by studying with a great professor who I never heard of, most people never heard of, makes you a good artist because you were influenced by them. Has nothing to do with your skill as a hand, but yet they think that that's indicating that they are good at what they're doing. But let's go back to love. So the next stage is, if a child is making a parent happy and they see that child is happy creating art for mommy and daddy, many of them will get a tutor or give them lessons or say, do you want to take art lessons? That's where greed comes in. What does the art teacher want? They're there and they're sometimes pure about it. They want to help people develop their skills. But in America, it said there are 4 million artists. You want to tell me how many of them are good artists? How many are hobbyists? How many have a chance to be good at a craft of fine art versus art history or curating or something else? So the teacher has an economic motive to tell the parents the child is doing well, meaning keep the lessons going, pay me money. And that continues throughout. And then you go into college and these kids are told they're good and how they're judged. Sometimes there are indications along the way, but they're going from the small pond into the bigger pond. It's getting tougher and tougher, so that at a college, these kids are saddled with debt. They're going in to become a fine arts major, and most colleges today do not screen. You're not talking about a Cooper Union or Rhode Island School of Design where you've got to apply and go through a rigorous evaluation. You're talking about state colleges, community colleges, 4,000 colleges that have art departments, whatever the number is, and they need the money. They want the money for their administration, for the faculty, and today the students are going to go out and the family, or they're going to go into debt for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and they're being taught what? Without even getting into skill set and abstract art and follow the teacher and digital art versus traditional art and art forms. They're graduating and they're a couple $100,000 in debt, thinking they go out and make a living as a fine artist, and now you're in the real world and you're competing with all these other talented people all over the country. Many of them are, represented by dealers and galleries. They're ahead of you, and where do you fit in? Is your art good enough to compete and to other artists that are out there that are equal or better, and how do you really know? So until that time, you're still developing. Even if MFAs, I see MFA students, they know nothing, and teachers tell me the students are not bright. They confide, they're really bad students, but they're paying good money. But no one tells them that. So they come out and not taught the business of art. They're not taught how to go about, even assuming if you're good. And there are so many good artists that are self-taught as well. I'm not saying that one has to do with the other, but so many artists are taught they're not good, including top university heads that I see, and they don't know how to market their art doesn't sell, and yet they're involved and they're dedicated, God bless them, and they're teaching well, and their own artwork is off to the side. They're not good examples. So you have all these people graduating every year, hoping, expecting, feeling, needing to know that they're good enough to have gone through the years and years of training. They hopefully are passionate about it, and they can go out and they can be successful. And the numbers tell you that's not true. It is not the case. All the students that are graduating as fine art majors, how few of them are going to make a living at it? And then you come to New York, and it's even worse. You can't get into a gallery. They won't have time to see you for economic reasons. They're committed to the existing artists they have. If they were looking at new portfolios, they'd have no time to run their business.
That's true. Well, there are a few places that actually specialize on emerging artists, indeed, but how many artists they can help in general. And as a side note, I didn't experience that in visual art, but when I was a little boy, I made a mistake of trying the piano, saying that I like it, and then enduring 3 painful years of actually trying to master it. Thankfully, my parents was wise enough to realize that that's not the direction to take. But about the grid, on a side note, it actually doesn't end with the time when the artist being educated. Because once they actually become an emerging artist, there are so many people, organizations, and companies that trying to take advantage of what they do, that you just have plethora of choices how you can actually invest in your art.
The greed continues, absolutely. And the greed continues in ways that artists don't even see.
That's true. Well, there are a few places that actually specialize on emerging artists, indeed, but how many artists they can help in general. And as a side note, I didn't experience that in visual art, but when I was a little boy, I made a mistake of trying the piano, saying that I like it, and then enduring 3 painful years of actually trying to master it. Thankfully, my parents was wise enough to realize that that's not the direction to take. But about the greed, on a side note, it actually doesn't end with the time when the artist being educated. Because once they actually become an emerging artist, there are so many people, organizations, and companies that trying to take advantage of what they do, that you just have plethora of choices how you can actually invest in
your art.
The greed continues, absolutely. And the greed continues in ways that artists don't even see when they're being told, buy me, do this, pay me here, and we'll get you results, or lead to get you results from things I've seen and experienced. And they're often successful to make money for the person selling the artist on their services and advice, but it doesn't translate. And by definition, some of these fail on their face and people don't see it. And one of my pet peeves is, and I'm generalizing, and I can tell you why I'm generalizing, when you see, and I subscribe to many, many newsletters and hundreds of emails I get every day to see what's happening. When you see someone offering to teach the artist how to be successful, to take their course, to become a member, to listen to their advice, to go on their website to be promoted, and they say, pay me and I will teach you, how can that be valid before that person even sees the art? To know that the art is good to be successful. They don't. So the artist doesn't think that. They say, oh, he means me, I'm good enough. The artist has no way of knowing. He hasn't made it. That's why he needs the advice. And yet they're willing to pay out hundreds of dollars, sometimes a month or more, to listen to an expert, buy their book, buy their course, enroll with them, when on its face, they cannot fulfill the promise to everyone because there's no valid criteria to evaluate that the artist can, in fact, be good enough.
Excellent. We will continue this thought after the break, and that's a very good point.
Excellent. We will continue this thought after the break, and that's a very good point. Hi, Alex AG again from Single Shot with another single trick. Today I want to tell you about using internal flash of the camera. Even some very professional cameras have that, but if you would ask a professional photographer, including myself, you would be told not to use it, especially on close-ups and especially when you're photographing people. Reason being, when you do it, the face being overblown. You're getting practically a white face instead of having nice skin tones and nice lighting. Is there anything you can do about it? Actually, yes, there is. You can just put in front of your flash a simple dollar bill and take a picture. What it will give you? Dollar bill is made of material thick enough to control enough light, and on top of it, it will give you some nice yellow tone to complement the skin tones of the person. This is Single Trick by Single Shot. Watch us on YouTube. All right, we're back in the air, and we was talking about the
advice. Greed.
Yeah.
So the greed extends itself to the art fairs and to the online services that I've worked with. And if you think about it, you believe what people tell you because you're not following the money. Art fairs are proliferated, and it's very expensive to go to an art fair. You spend thousands of dollars plus to buy a space, and it's very competitive. Many artists do not sell there, money to travel, to prepare for it, and they presume to tell you, oh, we're going to curate you in, so only the best will be here, apply to us. Now, that could be for online magazines, for vanity galleries, and they lie about that. They need to fill the booths. Now, maybe they'll take the best that apply, but I've been to some of these shows, and you walk through and you see right away, it doesn't work for many people, and it's sad. They don't know how to sell. They're shy, they're sitting there, they can't interact with people, they don't know how to frame the art, they don't know how to price the art, the art sometimes is just trivial, it's just derivative, there's nothing special about it. They have a hope, they have a dream, and I don't want to dash anyone's dream, but somewhere, if they're not realistic and find ways of measuring of what's promised and what's expected, which is a huge gap, they're going to be disappointed, and they'll invest and waste a lot of money. And that's to be avoided, but people don't see it. They do that all the time. And sometimes when I show them, they're surprised, really, I didn't know. Well, they don't do their research, they don't check, they just take at face value. Even take the online galleries. I just was with someone now, and he was with a famous online art gallery selling his images. So I asked him the same question I ask everyone, without even going into the other issues. What are you offering at what price, and what does that do to the rest of your market when you have a high-end product and you're offering images very low? I say, do they sell? And the issue is, it's flooded with artists. Being on there, you're lost in the crowd. Which is why eBay's art program doesn't really work, because it's so deep you can't find anyone. You still have to market yourself. How do you get any money? Do you get a revenue? Do they sell? Yes. Assume it's yes or no. Usually it's no or very little. So when you get a check as a royalty from selling to an online website with a big name, how do you know how many pieces they sold?
Well,
How do
that's
you
an
know?
interesting question.
How do you
indeed.
know? You don't know. You don't know if they sold 50 and they pay you 40, they pay you 10. Now, I'm not saying they're crooked, but if Wells Fargo can take advantage of people and cheat like they did, any corporation, in any industry is guilty of the temptation to not be accurate, not keep good accounting records, not pay on time, or even have bad thoughts. The artist is totally blind; they can't control it, and you have to realize that.
Well, let's hope the artists would get a little less blind after listening to this program. Thank you very much, Mr. Anonymous Expert. We will get to cover more of the subjects related to marketing your art, and that was indeed a very insightful program. I really hope
Well, let's hope the artists would get a little less blind after listening to this program. Thank you very much, Mr. Anonymous Expert. We will get to cover more of the subjects related to marketing your art, and that was indeed a very insightful program. I really hope on a personal level that a lot of people would, instead of getting offended or devastated by looking at it, will actually get a realistic perspective and would really think what way they should proceed. Thank you very much.
My goal is to help people. Thank you.
Our goal is to help indeed.
I hope you found that worth watching as much as I did. I'm Mark Unger for Roundtable. Thanks for watching.